Good morning, Chris.
That is strangely how my wife greets me.
I just got some bad news. I just got some bad news. I have sex daily. Sorry, dyslexia.
Oh, I knew where you were going, and oh god, the funniest part about that, we were just talking about that with Carly off air, is it's not funny, but your reaction is funny. It's like how hard you laugh at your own joke is the thing that's funny.
I try to play it straight. I just can't. I can't do it. Can't do it.
I think it's a great transition to go to the hook, Anthony. Have you ever wondered if keeping struggling team members actually holding back your entire company? I know you do, Anthony. In 1892, Daniel Pyle Upham faced a crisis at his growing paper company. His longtime friend and sales manager was consistently underperforming, missing quotas, and damaging morale. Instead of immediately firing him, Upham pioneered what became known as the Improvement Plan, a structured 90-day program combining clear metrics, regular feedback, and genuine support. The result transformed not just his friend's performance, but created a coaching framework that is still used to this day. How many times in your life have you been put on a 90-day plan, Anthony?
Never.
No, you never really had
but you and I have to have a conversation after the podcast, Chris.
Get this form we need to go through. Today on How to Founder, we're talking about building and maintaining high-performing teams. I'm Chris Franks. With me today is my dad joke, dyslexic friend, Mr. Anthony Franco. And fortunately, we have somebody that is going to save us from this pit.
Somebody a little bit more mature.
Yes, exactly. Way more mature. Carly Pepin is a veteran executive coach who has spent 15 years in the trenches, helping leaders scale their companies without losing their souls. She combines hard-nosed business framework with deep human insights to transform struggling teams into high-performing units. When she's not helping leaders break through growth barriers, you'll find her on the yoga mat. Don't do the Yogi Bear. Don't do it, Anthony.
I wasn't planning on it.
Exploring the world with her family. Carly, welcome, and just apologies. Sorry, for that and everything that's about to come. It is great to see you, Carly. Let's just start with the big question here. What do we need to be thinking about as founders when we find somebody in those challenging moments and we say, hey, is this person a good fit? Or do I really need to work with this person to try to improve their performance over time? What's the framework we should start thinking through?
Yeah, it's great to be here, guys. And I think I was fully prepared for this conversation by our conversation beforehand. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm glad to know. You've already been shocked. So
it's good. We're good to go now. So definitely when we're thinking about our employees, right? If you're not already having a job scorecard, it's definitely something that you're going to want to have for each employee that you're working with. It's something that you want to have even before when you're hiring them, right? We want to know exactly what the purpose of the job is, and we want to know exactly what metrics they're responsible for. And then also, there's some other indicators of, are they aligned with our core values? Are they up to date, like on the competencies that, we're looking for? And when we have these job scorecards, we can really review what's going on with an employee in depth to see like, hey, like they basically are really aligned with our core values. If someone's really aligned with the core values of the companies, they're really trying hard. We actually see they're trying hard, but they're not able to meet the metrics, right, that we've given them. These are the key metrics that are going to say like, hey, you're doing your job well, right? And if they can't meet those metrics, we look at it and we say, well, why can't they meet it? Is it because they're not engaged, or is it because there's a few competencies that are missing? And are these competencies coachable, right? And that's when we start to look like, hey, can I actually coach this person into the job that they're meant to be doing? Or is this something that I see they're not even willing to do? In fact, like this person gets in fights and arguments with people all the time. They're not even aligned with our core values. They complain about their job every day. They're not meeting their metrics. And it's like, I don't think they belong here.
Like that's just who he is as a person.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. We'll just use you as an example.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just use Anthony as an example. That's fine. Anthony, I do want to ask you is like, I think one of the pieces here that Carly brings up is this notion of really clearly defining responsibilities. And I think we talk about core values, and I think that those, we say you need to hire and fire by those core values, but job responsibilities and job descriptions can be a little problematic sometimes early in companies because they change, you don't really know, and the job changes, et cetera. In your experience, how do you create those sets of responsibilities for early stage employees?
This is a common problem where you're trying to write a job description for your first 5 employees, and the truth is it's like it's all the things like that, like that's the job description.
And you also put dishes in the dishwasher.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
do accounting.
Exactly right. So I think the smaller you are, the harder it is to write a job description, and deliverables, right? Because everybody's deliverable is grow profitable revenue, right? That's everybody's like KPI. And so it gets a little hard, and also it's Carly, I want you to weigh in on this, because I had a founder come to me a couple of years ago, and she was talking about, her company was 10 people. They were really it's the opening story. Her salesperson was underperforming. She was going to put him on a performance review plan, and I looked at her. I said, you don't have the 90 days to put him on the review plan. Like you're acting like a big company. You need to move on. Like you need to get him off payroll and do it yourself, or get somebody on payroll that you know is going to execute. So I do believe in performance review plans, but there is a point at which it can kill your business. Love your thoughts on that. And how do you think about that?
Yeah, well, this is half the fun of being like the business owner entrepreneur. We often don't have that kind of time, This is half the fun. We often don't have that kind of time when we have these smaller companies. Like we don't have the kind of time to really think about that dynamic. And sometimes we are jumping in as the owner. Like you're the one who's jumping in, you're the one who's diving into that dynamic. I really do suggest you just start with this stuff from the very beginning, right? So it's like, if your goal is to increase your profit and revenue, when we break down goals, what do? Right? We break down a goal and I say, I want to reach 1,000 people by X amount of time, right? And then I break down that goal into multiple steps, step by step by step, until it's so small that it's something that I can engage in every day. What if we thought of the same thing with our metrics, right? So it's like, if that was my metric, what are the metrics that are going to actually get me there for each individual employee at the company? So if I have 10 employees, what would the individual in sales be in charge of? And then we look at it. It's like, how many leads are you generating per month, right? Like how many individuals are you talking to per month? Like what is your close rate, right? And then all of a sudden we can see early on if they're not meeting those metrics, so that you have the 90 days to either be like, you're out, and you can even do it faster sometimes, but it's like, I'll give you 30 days, like you're out or you're in, like we've had a lot of time already, so that's why it's really important to get these metrics sorted out far beforehand so that you can kind of watch it. It's almost like the predictive ability that we know this is going to crash and burn. We know it. Because if not, what we're doing is we're doing everything last minute. And that stresses us out, like as founders, owners. It gives us like this just chaos, and it's hard. It gets hard. And that's when usually we're getting burnt out, when we're trying to put out fires on a regular basis.
I think she brings up something really interesting, Chris. It's because yes, early stage companies, everybody does everything, but in reality, you should own a metric. Each person should own their own metric. Like if everybody owns everything, right? Then nobody owns anything. So I do think that's a great tip, Carly, is to make sure that you write down this is how you are being measured.
Yeah, for sure.
It's funny too, because we as founders, we constantly talk about how we want to create experiments and we want to create structure and we want to go and identify and take a systematic approach to our market and our marketing and our sales and our product development. And then we hire people like, I don't know, we don't have that same rigor and discipline that we have with our employees that we do with all other parts of our business. I think, Carly, what you're saying is create a little bit of that rigor. Is that a fair statement?
100%. 100%. So this is really funny because I used to work in this company, right? And it was a small company and there was only 5 people and I was the everything person and everyone didn't have their metrics. So if someone didn't feel like doing something, it was like, Carly will just do it. Carly will just do it. And Carly did it, right?
You were the bucket at the bottom of the rain spout. Like
that was it. That was it. And it would make me insane because I would get pissed off at the office and I'd be furious and I'd be like, why am I always the one doing this? Why am I the one picking it up? It's like, oh,
by the way, we're hiring Carly.
Yeah, I know, right? Totally, everyone. And they're like, but here's the challenge. All they did is they literally turned me into an entrepreneur. Like I basically had to learn how to do everything within a company. And that at a certain point, I just sat there and I was like, why am I working here? Like I'm getting paid nothing to do everything. And I was like, I'm done. I'm going to build my own company now. And so it's hysterical because it's like, you don't even realize your employees are frustrated because they don't know what to do. People are dropping the ball. People are going to argue internally because nobody really knows who's responsible for what. So it doesn't create a culture that people want to stay. People don't see it as a place where they're going to grow and thrive. And when we think about that too, is like, you don't want to coach someone up also that's like not wanting to be there, but also it's your job and responsibility to ensure that people want to be there. And how do we get them to want to be there? Sometimes it's as simple as like there's a couple individuals who I saw there who it's like, man, they would just thrive. Like give them exactly what they're responsible for, give them exactly what they're meant to like achieve, and that person would just thrive because all they want to do is sit down and get their job done. They just want to show up, go to work and get their job done. And that's usually what we have in companies is employees who genuinely want to be employees. They don't want to run around and do everything. If they did, they'd be entrepreneurs. They want to come up, they just want to do their job and they want to go home and they want to enjoy themselves. Like, let's give them that opportunity.
Anthony, the other thing that's funny is I think that we approach hiring from our lens, which is like, look, come in, try this job. If you don't like it, go do something else. And the reality is employees do have a different mindset. They have a scarcity mindset, which is I need this job, I need this job. I don't want to go look for another job. I don't want to look for another job.
Well, it changes, right? It does change. It does change as your company grows. You go to 0 to 10. It's different than 10 to 25, which is different from 25 to 50. So you need to graduate as a hiring manager or hiring leader as your company matures. And the adage goes, what got you here won't get you there. So you can't, I agree with you, Chris. Early stage, it's like, you sure you want to work here? And then it really starts to shift pretty quickly.
But it's funny,
Yeah.
in this coaching conversation, Carly, I've approached it with people being like, you're smart. You can go get another job. Like, why are you being miserable? Why are you like, if you are not happy here, go find another job. Like, I think you're doing fine, but you seem to be unhappy doing this work. And so, but that is a different mindset as employees, to your point. So Carly, let's talk about the idea there. So we now have an employee, and let's say that we've done a good job of structuring those job descriptions. Let's say that we've got a pretty good idea of the metrics that we want them to achieve, and they're just not there. So the crux of this conversation is, what do we do and how do we make those decisions? Take me through the steps you would suggest I or any other CEO or you would go through in working through that problem systematically.
Yeah, just like any challenge, any problem, we really want to get into the meat of why specifically this person isn't moving forward. Like, why are they not actually achieving their metrics, right? And if it genuinely is because they're not engaged, they're not interested, like there's individuals who have potentially like this is the only time where maybe I'll come in and I'll be like, okay, we could do this workshop, we could help them get more engaged and more production. Like there are definitely ways that I can make that happen.
Yeah.
However, realistically, we still want to look at the individual. If this is someone who's been at the company for 10 years and maybe they've had like a loss in their family or something, right? Like we look at that and all of a sudden, or they're going through divorce. So all of a sudden their productivity has decreased based on something in the back end. You have someone who used to be an A player. Usually that's someone when I'm working with an individual, they're like, yeah, I actually want to work with this person. I actually want to save them, right? Because this is someone who's just lost productivity based on life experiences and something that's going on. If we're looking at someone who's generally unproductive, right? They're generally not engaged. They're not only not engaged in their job description, but also in the company culture, right? That's most likely a person that even if this is fun, by the way, whenever I work with companies, I'll be like, hey, we're going to put this stuff in place. And I tell them, I'm like, people are going to quit. People are genuinely going to quit, but you're going to find the people that quit are the low performers who are not engaged in the values of the company and the mission of the company. They're going to get frustrated and annoyed because I'm going to ask them to engage to a greater degree. I'm going to ask them to be evolved. I'm going to ask them to stretch outside their comfort zone. And they're immediately going to quit. So it's kind of fun to just go in. And this happens on leadership teams as well, where it's like, we're going to push some people to hold themselves accountable to a greater degree and they're going to quit. So that's kind of a fun dynamic too, is just getting in there and actually doing work with individuals, like even in groups, they just quit when they're like those people. And then you look and you're like,
you're going to make me work? How
Yeah,
dare you?
What are you thinking?
What
Like,
consequences for not meeting goals? Come on.
They genuinely quit. It's amazing to watch and they get pissed off at you. So those are the individuals that when you look back, you're like, wow, like this is the person who I was actually considering letting go of, right? I was considering letting go because it's just too much to get them moving. They're so unengaged in all these different areas. It's too much to get them moving. So it's really to take and pay attention on those score. That's why we like the scorecards, right? We like the scorecards because we want to know where they're unengaged and how they're unengaged. So when you dive into the details of it, it's like, can I coach through this, right? Because if you're looking at a salesperson, you're like, this person's like genuinely amazing. They have all these competencies, but the one thing that they can't do is like, there's this one competency that they're struggling with. And it's like, oh, I can train them into that. That's awesome. And I'm going to do that because this person's really engaged. They're engaged with the values of the company. They're engaged every day. They're interested in the mission. They come up with new ideas, but it's this one competency that is trainable. And then you go in and you're like, yeah, I'll train that person, because this is an individual like worth keeping within this company. So again, that scorecard will give you the details on exactly where the gap is. And that's when it's like not trainable or trainable. That's why I love those scorecards. We want the data. This is data.
Anthony, I want to ask a related question, but it's something that's so ubiquitous. I feel like we need to have a name for it, which is it's the short-term pain versus long-term gain sort of index or something, which is a lot of times we fail to make these decisions and start to hold people accountable because even if they're doing a third as well as they should be doing, they're doing a third. And if they leave or get fired, it means I have to do it. And so even though long-term, like, look, I need to spend time and teach this person, I need to coach, or I need to get rid of them. Both of those avenues mean that you're going to have to spend more time and more energy and more of your brain power in that pathway. It's a fallacy though, Anthony. And how would you suggest to me as a founder, how do I get over that mental loop?
So in my last 3 decades of leading teams, whenever I've delayed having a conversation or moving on something I know I should move on, the long-term pain far outweighs the short-term pain. It's almost like when you let somebody go that clearly isn't going to cut it, it almost makes everybody's job easier. It's astounding how much there's a sense of relief. Like, oh, thank goodness like that person's no longer here. When you have somebody that's just simply not cutting it, not only are they not only doing the 2/3 of the job they should be doing, they're dragging everybody else down from being as productive as they could be. So, when it comes to performance reviews, getting back to that, I won't do performance reviews. What I'll do is I'll sit somebody down, just have a really candid conversation. You're not cutting it, and here's why. And it's blunt. It's not unkind. It's just blunt. Here's what the company needs from you. Here's what your team needs from you. And I would say 1 out of 5 step up. The other 4 don't. Mm-hmm. And then it's, once you have that conversation, it's constantly it's like following through on that conversation. Where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? And to Carly's point, a lot of folks will just say that I'm there. They start looking for a job, right? The people that are going to leave, once you have that conversation, they're already putting their resume out there. Mm-hmm. And so you've started the process of either them deciding to step up or move out.
It's funny though, Carly, because that's the exact same thing that Anthony told me his wife told him, which is like, look, you're just not. Just not. You may want to update your resume. I'm just
my Match.com profile dust that thing off.
To your point, though, Anthony, 47% of high performing employees leave companies that retain underperformers too long. That's Eagle Hill Consulting sort of and so, Carly, this is the bad apple concept, right? Like you have to take action on this.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
think the point there that is that when you work with teams as a whole, you have to force people to make decisions on this one, even if there is short-term pain, because you are creating poor performance across the board. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. So it's basically, and again, this is just bringing forward the data where we're showing how it's actually having an impact on the company. And this will come through, not just through, the metrics, but also through the feedback, right? So if we look at feedback within a company, and this is for small and large companies, you guys, I'm working with a dental office that has, 5 individuals there. And it's the same feedback as like the larger companies I work with that have hundreds of people, right? So it's quite interesting because you can see there's one individual at the dental office that is making everyone nuts. And every
week,
the
dentist, because they are notoriously terrible.
No, he's actually awesome.
I've had a couple students that worked in the dental.
He's the one who has
terrible people.
He's like the one who has like the big heart and is like, I just want to see if we could coach him up. And then the business partner is like, listen, I have a conversation with this person every week. I'm getting complaints every week. I'm like, I just want to fire him so bad. And so we're actually convincing him like, it's time to go. But you're seeing the dynamic and how frustrated people are. And it's even in these smaller companies, they're bringing it to the table. And again, this person is in the office with like the manager once a week with issues and problems and unwilling to move forward and being combative. And it's like, just let them go, man. But we're going to start some of this stuff where we're going to go in and we're going to do some of the human behavior work. We're going to dive in. We're going to do some of the profiles dynamics and get them to do some team building, which they will be very resistant to. And I have a feeling this person's going to quit soon. So this will be that individual, as you say, as soon as we start to we're having them implement scorecards and team building work. Like this is the person that's most likely already looking for a new job because they see what's on the horizon. So yeah.
I want to ask one big question for both of you. And I know that we need to start driving towards actual points and get the speed around, Anthony, but there is this idea, what am I responsible for as an employer? So I know that Carly, or if you have a bad day, like it's okay, like come in, bring your whole self to work. I want to create that environment. But there are people that just love to be miserable, that love it. I can't fix that. I can't fix it. Like, where does my responsibility stop as far as actual human beings? And I know, Anthony, we talk about this as a hiring thing, but maybe we made a bad hire. I want to be compassionate. I want to show up. I want to build an open, inclusive team where you can bring yourself whole self to work. But I can't fix human beings. I've got a job to do. I know it's a big question. It might be too big to kind of cover in a few minutes. But Carly, what do you think?
We can cover that one. Okay, so this is interesting because if someone's coming to work and they're miserable all the time, that demonstrates to me that there is nothing in this job or position that is actually in alignment with what they truly value in life. There's a process that I take employees through as groups where we go through and we actually understand what they do truly value in life. And we link their job duties to what that actually is, because what they value might not have anything to do with what they're doing. It might be sports, it might be their family. It might be fashion sometimes, right? It's like it depends on what it is. And so we'll go through every job duty and we'll link it to what that looks like so that they're not miserable at work. The only reason people are miserable at the office is because they can't see how it fulfills what's truly important to them. So that's usually a process that I'll take people through as groups. If I'm working with a CEO or founder, because realistically, this also happens with CEOs and founders as well, that's usually because there are many things that have occurred that have created burnout in their business. And now they've lost that connection with what was once inspiring. So I'll work with them one-on-one to get that invigoration again so that they can show up and not be that individual. Because if they're miserable every day, again, it's just feedback for me that's like, let's get you lined up. Let's get this linked up.
Yeah. Anthony, I mean,
Yeah.
you and I have had friends that, ended up being terrible CEOs because they just got burned out in their own business. They built the house and they knew they built the house. But
Yeah.
if you would have, talked to them honestly, they'd want to burn it down. Like they built this thing and they now were trapped inside.
That happens a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Just one more point to push on this is how do I know as a founder, like it's kind of a deeper conversation, like about relationships. Like you can't be happy in a relationship unless you're happy with yourself. How do I know really that person is not somebody that's coachable, that is just going to be unhappy in their circumstances? And it has nothing to do with work. It's just where they are in their life. And how do I even get below that psychological layer, Carly? And again, I know this is not exactly the topic we started, but I think it's an interesting tact.
Well, I think to Anthony's point, because we're going to build off this one, is, when he sits down and has a conversation with someone, because you have all this data, you have all this information, and now we're going to sit down, we're going to hold someone accountable. To Anthony's point, they're just going to do it or they're not. And you're going to see it really fast. That's why when you do even almost mini weekly reviews, even if you're just doing it for 5 minutes at a time, like if you pressured someone for 5 minutes once a week, in a month, you would know if they were going to do something. It'd be really fast. And then you could also see they might come to you in that 5 minutes in that week and be like, yeah, I've been really trying. I just can't figure this out. This is like a technical thing I don't understand, but I saw there's this course on da 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 da. Is that possible that we could invest in that and I could take it? Like they'll try to find a solution. They'll go look for one because they don't want to lose their job. They want to learn instead. And so that's the conversational component where it's like, have that tough conversation, bring it up. Yes, it seems brutal, but it's also the reality of the situation. You're not doing your job, you're going to lose it anyways. Let's give you the chance to actually do what it takes to get there. You'll notice pretty quickly, like if someone's going to move forward or not. So we have the data, we bring it to the table with them, and then we see what they're going to do with it.
It's also, I feel like sometimes it can be the most compassionate thing you can do for somebody.
It
even
really
though
is. Yeah.
In that moment, they're going to feel terrible. And it's like they feel like they're being judged or rejected. If you can do it in a way where like, look, I like you as a human being, but I think you're destined for other things. You need to go do something else because you're, lovingly, you're terrible at this job. But I know you're a great person. Go do something else that you're going to be awesome at.
I'll often help them find their next thing.
Yeah. Let me know how I can help you, et cetera. All right, Anthony, shall we move into the speed round? I'm talking slowly. It's like I had to really set him up for that. So like,
you have access to the button too, Chris.
It's really true. I should probably I don't even know why I try to get you to do it. It's sitting right in front of me. We just make things work. Carly, we're going to need some metrics from you on this, on our podcast performance.
Got it.
We're going to need a scorecard on this. All right, Carly, weekly check-ins or monthly deep dive one-on-ones?
Oh my gosh, all of the above. Also dailies. Yeah.
Really a systematic 1, 2, 3 strikes you're out, or do we just take this on a case-by-case basis?
Case by case.
Coach in private or leverage public learnings and peer learnings?
Also case by case, depending on the individual. Yeah.
Set really firm improvement timelines or just leave development open-ended?
Firm improvement timelines. Definitely deadlines hold us accountable.
I like it. Lead with metrics or lead with behaviors?
You can metric behaviors. So
Answer is both.
with that
like
one.
it.
Yeah.
That is pretty good. Really good conversation. Anthony, what did you take away from this conversation?
I'm going to skip the joke. All right. So the founder fundamentals, the founder fundamentals that I wrote down. Everyone should have a metric or 3 that they're measured on. I think that's really kind of important. Like you said, Carly, a scorecard that they know that they're being measured on. I wrote down create consequence clarity, define specific outcomes for success and failure. Set performance tripwires, establish non-negotiable minimum standards. And then last tip I wrote, underperforming employees have a severe negative impact on all others.
I think all very good points. Deep dive recommendations, Radical Candor by Kim Scott, terrific book. The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stanier. Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Grenny, McMillian, and Switzler. What other recommendations do you have, Carly? Books, podcasts, anything that you like? And most importantly, where can we connect with you?
Yeah, so many books, by the way. So I'll just share the one that I just read. That was really fun. So I just read Uncontainable, which is great. It's a story of the Container Store, and they have some great principles. And I think it's perfect because we're talking about people and getting people engaged. So it's actually like quite inspiring to see how they built their culture and what they do.
I like it.
So definitely check that one out. And yes, where you can find me is westcoastgrowthadvisors.com. And then you can reach out to me directly there.
westcoastgrowthadvisors.com. That's it's hard for me to say, but that's because I'm from Texas. That's good. Carly, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Terrific conversation and changed my thinking on a couple of these points. Anthony, what do we have coming up in the next little chunk of time?
We're gonna talk about leading with compassion on our next episode. So really looking forward to that. Carly, thank you so much for joining us. And also everybody listening in, really appreciate you supporting the podcast. Just as a reminder, go to howtofounder.com and you can subscribe to us on all of the channels. And for Chris's sanity, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's killing him, folks. It's just killing him. So we need to work on your sad face, Chris. We'll talk about that in our performance
also,
review.
you probably need some coaching to me to help me get through this behavioral issue.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.